All right. Hello, everyone. We are live. I am so excited to be here with Isa Watson today. I'm going to go into her insane bio. She's had the most interesting life and journey and career, and probably knows how to do more things than most humans alive. But first, I wanted to quickly introduce myself. I am Allie Wyatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. And we are doing this as part of a series for educating everybody on what the 10th house is. And the 10th house is FFC's private membership community as a support system to female founders everywhere, to give them a space to connect with other founders by stage, by industry, by geography, to give them incredible education and programming to help them level up on skills they need to know now, whether it is how to build a customer acquisition model or how to raise capital or how to find the right investors, how to think about the funding types they should be chasing down depending on what their business is. And we also have a myriad of incredible corporate partners that are along for the ride as well, giving exclusive prices that all add up to be a lot less than the price of membership itself. So definitely check us out. But without further ado, I want to get in with Isa and really give you all the incredible knowledge that she has amassed over time. So I'm going to read her bio because it's very rich. But she is the CEO and co-founder of Squad. And prior to founding Squad, she was the vice president of digital strategy at JP Morgan Chase in New York and Hong Kong. She worked closely with senior management to build and execute various strategic initiatives across product development, analytics, marketing, and client service for various JPMC businesses. And before joining JP Morgan Chase, she worked at Pfizer, both as a research chemist and a clinical trial strategy analyst, which is a mouthful. In 2017, she was named as Inc.'s 30 Under 30 honoree. She is the youngest serving member of the MIT Sloan Executive Alumni Board, insane, where she advises MIT administration on key strategic priorities for the school. She earned an MBA from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and an MS in pharmacology from Cornell, which is my alma mater, and a BS in chemistry from Hampton University, where she was an American Chemical Society and National Science Foundation scholar. And you're also an illustrious pianist as well. So basically, she can do it all. But I really want to go deep, Isa, on your journey because it is a winding one. And you have some really beautiful stories that we can all learn from. And one of the quotes I actually pulled out from an interview that you talked about is that the meaning of life is to find your gift and the purpose of life is to give it away. And I absolutely love that quote. Remind me of who that's by.
I actually forget.
I'm forgetting as well. But I think actually it was Pablo Picasso.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah. So I want to get into talking about your journey of finding your purpose and then, of course, giving it away, because often people think of success as super linear. Can you share what brought you here and talk a little bit about the sort of 2020 hindsight of your career?
Well, first of all, Allie, thank you so much for having me on here today. I think that the work that you guys are doing, both with FFC and the 10th house, is very much needed and will be very transformative to the emerging group of female founders. So thank you.
Thank you.
As far as my journey, yes, you're right. Success is not linear. In fact, it's like it goes like that, right?
There was a crash in there and then
several crashes.
Yeah.
That quote came from, some teachings in my childhood from my father. He used to always say to me, he said, Isa, you're such a blessed girl and it's your job to share your blessings with as many people as you can while you're on this planet. And so, as my parents as community leaders in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, emerged as really, amazing and influential people in the community. And one of the things, that I started to feel over time was the impact that social media was having on community and connection overall. And, in particular, making us really depressed, and making us feel isolated and lonely because you're looking at these curated versions of people's lives. And so, that led me to eventually, leaving corporate America and founding Squad. We describe Squad as the intimate social experience. So we say, unlike, social where you're focused on engagement and likes, Squad's the place where you go deep with a handful of people, in a voice only, fun and engaging type of way. And so, at this point we're venture capital backed and, lucky and blessed to have an amazing set of partners who believe in the possibilities of our dream just as much as we do. But, it's definitely been, a journey, but, that's kind of the overarching place to start.
So you started Squad in what year? Remind me.
A few years ago, actually. So we started prior to COVID. We were really focused on, getting people to meet together in real life. We definitely had a pivot during COVID of transitioning to more of a voice only app, but we've been at it for a few years.
And talk to me about the voice only piece. Why did you decide to do that? Mm-hmm. And how does the app work? Like, walk us through the process and how people can sign up and the value that they get, et cetera.
Yeah. So going back to Squad being an app for people to get together in real life, we scaled to thousands and thousands of users in New York. As a contrast to, I could be online and I can, double tap and like your photo, but that presence of laughing in the same room or just hearing someone's voice was something that we were just kind of getting away from, right? And so during, at the onset of the pandemic, what happened was that we transitioned all of the IRL meets to video and audio. And two things we found. One was that audio was a much more sustainable way to maintain communication consistently. It's low commitment, but you hear the intimacy of someone's voice. You hear the intonations in their voice when their pitch is high, when their pitch is low, all these things that are like kind of semi nonverbal communication, people were, very drawn to. But the other thing we found that was very interesting was that instead of people, going to new things all the time with new people, they actually were going to different events with the same people. And they got more joy in going deep with the handful of people. And so, from where we, evolved perspective, the app is we have a pretty simple interface, and this is how it works. So these are the people I talk to most in my Squad, these top 5 people. These are one-on-one voice messages. These are the other people in Squad, including my best friend who was a co-creator of the Moderna vaccine. And these are Squad updates. So anybody who is in my Squad who wants to post an audio update, you post an audio update and you get like a prompt, right? So I feel my vibe today is, whatever, and I can record something and then it posts to up to 12 people that are in my Squad. Like for instance, like before I got on with you, I was like, oh my God, I have not done appearances, TV, interviews in like a year. I realized I've been in Nike shorts like all year. I don't even know how to dress anymore. And I hope my makeup is okay. So
that's fabulous.
So the idea of, again, cultivating, an intimate experience for just you and your closest people, as opposed to having you discover all the content and be obsessed with what Kim Kardashian is doing, who you've never laughed in the same room with. That's the purpose of Squad. As far as how people can get on the app, we are operating off a wait list, but we will let everyone in here. But withyoursquad.com is a way that you get in and put your name and phone number.
And can you actually, as the individual, curate who you want to be part of that close circle, or can anybody come in? Like, talk to us about the process of building that network, and it is created to get you closer to the people that you already sort of know and love. So talk to us about how the technology helps in assisting with that.
So you're familiar probably with Facebook or Meta or whatever they're going to call themselves next. And it's you see that there's a double opt-in process. So if I invite you to be my friend and you accept, we're each other's friends. Think of Squad as up to 12 one-on-one relationships. So if I invite you to be a part of my squad, we're a part of each other's squad. If I invite Susan to be a part of my squad, we're in each other's squads. But if you don't know Susan, then you're not going to hear anything that Susan says, right? So
Yeah.
it's the squad is the only app where the group is completely dynamic around that central user. So if you have like I have 5 siblings and, my parents, and we have our family group chat, that's a static group of people. I have a brother who never speaks in our family group chat and only talks to me on squad,
Yeah.
And so,
It is
think
great
about
for
that.
like
It's great for families, but it's also really great for like friends.
Yeah.
My mom actually asked to be in my squad, and I declined her because I was just like, 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 you're not my people like that, like.
Well, I love that because particular to like Clubhouse, you do just sometimes want to be with the people where you want to have an intimate conversation. And, I have more WhatsApp groups than I could imagine. So often I just want to make an audio conversation, or I'm like dictating into my phone because I'm walking somewhere.
Exactly.
So I love that you're able to actually have that kind of communication be much more intimate.
And the one thing is funny, we had a user say to us, she said squad is the most intimate place that she communicates with her friends, and that the squad icon is right next to her iMessage icon in her phone.
That's amazing.
So imagine a place where you're not getting bombarded with all these auto warranty calls and all these texts from people who you don't want to talk to. And just having that safe, secret, just intimate place for the people that bring you the most joy.
I love that. Now, I want to go into your fundraising journey because we know that there's a lot of crazy statistic, and just data over the years has shown that even venture capital ecosystem is starkly homogenous. Surprise, surprise. And in 2018, just 3% of VC partners in the US were Black, while 80% were white, according to a study from Deloitte and National Venture Capital Association. And in the study in the US venture activity from 2013 to 2017, just 1% of VC-backed entrepreneurs were Black, which is just absolutely crazy. So I want to hear about how you cracked into Silicon Valley, and if you have any sort of takeaways that you would suggest for founders that are starting out on their journey, whether they're women, whether they're underrepresented women. I think it's helpful that we share this information so that people can be better equipped as they do start that process.
I would definitely say that cracking into Silicon Valley was just such a painfully long and intense process. And quite frankly, it started with me trying to find domain experts in various places. So in leveraging my networks at MIT, Hampton, and Cornell to do so. So for example, I got connected with a number of very strong product and product growth people, and would have conversations with them. And then I was like, well, I need help on the marketing side. I would start having conversations with them. The one thing I will say is that it's easier to build the relationships with funders and venture capitalists before you need money. If you go to them and you're like, hey, I need money, that's a whole different dynamic. So my first suggestion is to get started early, and earlier than you think. You can control
before you need money.
Before you need money. You can control the conversation and tell them what you want to tell them, and you don't have to disclose what you're not comfortable disclosing. But, I notice investors make a lot of funding decisions off the basis of relationships, right? And so start early. The second thing is to be consistent and create a feedback loop. So one of the things that I did was I said, okay, I'm going to start talking to investors. And quite frankly, my next conversation, I didn't always know or have a perspective on what that would be. It was, I met with this person. They were very impressed by me. They were very impressed by what we're building. And so they introduced me to these 3 people. And then I met with those 3 people. And then they introduced me to the next 3 people. And so that now I went from that one person to 9 people. Right. Wow. And so there's a natural inherent feedback loop of how viral virally you're getting introductions, right? And if I did a really great job of maintaining those relationships. I actually kind of put them all in one doc, and I was like, this is what the person said. Another thing too about relationship management is when someone gives you suggestions and they give you part of their time, looping back with them to say, hey, by the way, I took your advice on this particular growth experiment and this was the outcome. That person is going to show up for you in a 10x with 10x more intensity. And so I think that a lot of times we don't like create that right loop that amplifies over time. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing, from a fundraising perspective, when you're ready to go out on the market, is I always say to have a quarterback. And not everyone will be able to find this, but it's very helpful. And that's kind of that one person who has the social capital and social clout among these investor groups to make introductions. That could be another VC-backed founder. It could be an investor type of person, but you want someone who is known to the community, right? And you want someone who people actually like and respect. And so for me, when raising our seed round, that for us was Charles Hudson, who is the managing partner, Precursor Ventures. And Charles was, made a slate of intros. We listed like 30 firms. The first 5 intros were with firms that I actually wasn't super excited about, or people I wasn't super excited to meet, just to kind of like make sure I was getting like good feedback and not going first to the person I wanted the most, right?
Because a lot of investors suggest that there's been a lot of research that's shown that is a perfect strategy for success, is sort of meeting with the initial investors that aren't as important. They're not your sort of priority ones. Isa, can you speak to how you determine that?
Yeah, I think for me, there are two things. But finishing my last point though, like making that, having a quarterback as a person who also back channels for you and helps you close those feedback loops, like that's kind of the third part to actually execute that. So as far as ascertaining who to bring on a cap table, who not to bring on your cap table, it's actually a combination of an art and a science. When you don't know the person, you haven't met the person, you don't know what your chemistry is like. It's like, what are their perspectives? What are their theses? What are they writing about? But most importantly, if you can get this information, what are other founders saying about them? Like I know for a fact I've met with investors where, at top 5 firms where founders have told me behind the scenes, hey, when my company went sideways, this person abandoned me. And so that kind of trust component and experience with that person, with other founders, is really important. But the other part is actually meeting them. I think that an investor founder relationship is very much kind of a chemistry and a timing thing as well. I always tell people, like, you wouldn't like jump into a marriage after knowing somebody for 5 seconds, but oftentimes we have to jump into relationships with these investors, and those relationships last on average 10 years before we like have a meaningful exit, right? And so there's a chemistry and a gut and a trusting that you have to kind of like, I've learned to trust my gut on this. I'm not going to always make every single decision perfectly, but there's a strong chemistry and gut feel. And then there's also like just the kind of content, like what's their general reputation and what are founders saying about them.
Got it. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
So the quarterback, it's essential to have that person, and it's the feedback loops. And you tracked that. How, Isa? You said you had a spreadsheet that you would just fill in and keep updated every single time you would connect with them. But it wasn't like particular software or anything.
I actually use the Airtable, and for investors in general, I forget what I called it my FOH doc, which is like fundraising objection handling, but also kind of funny. It's like, fuck out of here, So that was like that essential doc that I used to document. I met with this investor. These are the objections they raised, right? And I think that when you're fundraising, every investor is going to have some objection, whether it's going to be oh, you're too early, the market's too crowded, I don't think your revenue model is strong enough, whatever it is, it's going to be something.
Mhm.
And I think that over time, like what I did is I found the trends and then I would fix the story the next time I told it. So
Love that.
my feedback the first time I raised money with from the first 5 meetings I had, everyone said your market's not big enough. We're not interested. And one of my advisors was like, your market is actually huge. That tells me you're not telling the story in a very compelling and large way. So I said, okay, scratch how I'm telling the story now. I'm going to like tell it in a much bigger way. And then all of a sudden, I never got that piece of feedback again. Right. And so it's really important to kind of like proactively handle the objections and try to anticipate as much of what people will object to. That way you have answers for them, and you don't have to know everything, but you have to at least show that you've addressed and kind of thought through or have some type of perspective on it.
Right. And you, at the end of the day, ended up getting some top funds involved, as well as incredible investors. Like you've got Katrina Lake, who is a supporter of yours. How did
Mhm.
you make that connection? And I also, and I want to sort of guide you there because I watched a video interview where you talked about the fact that you take tons of meetings, and you were just talking about that before, like this notion of networking. Can you speak to how that philosophy of just taking a lot of meetings helped you to basically get these major investors secured?
I would actually kind of alter that a little bit to say that I took a lot of meetings early on with a low bar of expectation of what I would get out of that meeting, just
Yep.
because I was really trying to get my grounding and find my footing. These days, I actually take very few meetings because I'm connected to who I need to, and I can get to who I need to pretty easily.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, as far as Katrina, we had actually run into each other a few times.
Wow.
She was in New York speaking at an event at Forbes. I ran into her there. Then it turns out that one of my friends was her business school classmate. Then it turned out that actually she was following me on Twitter and Instagram when I
Wow.
was on Instagram. And like, I actually just DM'd her. And I was like, hey, da da da. And she was like, oh my God, like I've been wanting to meet with you. Here's my email address. And she's been incredibly helpful. And she just has a really um, strong perspective of support of what we're doing. So that kind of
Yeah.
aligned with her personal mission as well. But I would say that, like I said at the beginning, when I was very much an unknown entity to Silicon Valley and to a lot of folks in there, it was really about let me just get in the room. And then now, like I kind of graduated to, okay, I don't have to take every meeting with every person. Now I have to be focused on like what I need to get done. Like for instance, I'm not taking meetings with Series D, Series E investors when I'm a Series A company, right? Not yet. Or I'm not taking meetings with, pre-seed investors if I'm a Series B company, or I'm not taking meeting with like hardware investors if I'm like, and so I think that it is important to kind of manage your energy over time. And like, it's okay to, be more selective with who you are giving your time to.
I love that. And it's so important. Ruthless prioritization is what Lindsay Taylor Wood just talked about in the last one of the series that we did.
Yeah.
I have a question for you too around pivoting, right? And managing that process with your team, with your investors, and honestly with yourself, right? There's so many companies where COVID forced them to sort of rethink their entire strategy. Can you walk through the process that you went through during COVID and then how you communicated that to your team and to investors?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, pivoting is it's actually one of the hardest things to do as a founder.
Right.
And I think that we don't tell enough pivot stories. Like YouTube was an online dating video platform,
It
or
was?
yeah, Slack was a
Wow.
gaming company. Was $20 million in fundraise wise.
Wow.
Groupon was like a charity donation platform. Yeah. So, it's something that we don't talk about enough unless we kind of get on the
Yeah.
other side. And we're like, oh, success. Oh, yeah, we pivoted like 10 years before.
Right.
And so basically our story was that at a high level, we were always about how do we enhance and strengthen the connection that human beings have with one another, and specifically, the people that they want to be around. And our first approach to that was getting people together in person as opposed to just kind of being online all the time. Um, Obviously, COVID hit with a very initially with a lot of uncertainty around when we would resume
Right.
normalcy. First it was like a month, then it was like, oh, by June, then it was like, okay, it's been like a year and a half, it's fine, whatever. Like
And we're still going.
and we're still going. And so for me, two things happened. One thing is that I kind of went and I reassured there a few things that happen when you're pivoting. You're kind of following the users and following what they're doing with the platform and making sure that it still matches the market opportunity. What we found was that people extracted a lot of value from the IRL stuff, but they were also extracting just as much, if not more value when their communities became more insular, meaning like they had discovered the people that they were really close to and they just wanted to go deeper and more frequently with those people. And we were like, wow, okay, as we follow this power user, as we follow this power user, they haven't switched up their friends in forever. And they keep coming back to, the app every other day, every week, chatting with their friends. And so that was the place where we said, okay, we can shift and we can kind of make sure that we are building a solution that, yes, is applicable to COVID, the pandemic, but also can extend beyond the pandemic. And so when we, shifting and pivoting is hard. It's hard at the team level. It's hard for your mental psychology. It's also hard with the investor level. And so kind of with my own mental, it was all right. Like I'm following the users. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my investors, but like my biggest priority is making sure that we deliver an amazing and exceptionally valuable user experience.
Right.
And I doubled down on that. Then with the team, that can be hard too, because we were like, okay, we're going to change the whole kind of feature set and design and experience of the app. Oh yeah, like what does that look like? Okay, we have all these infrastructure changes in the back. We have all these front end changes. We're using different libraries, different languages. Okay, do I have the right set of engineers to make that happen? Do I have the right product manager and comms people to make that happen? That was another thing. And then with investors, I'm fortunate enough to have a board where, my investors, they'll give me their opinion, but at the end of the day, they'll let me make the decision and they won't mess with my decision. And so essentially what I did was I had a conversation with him and I'm like, listen, this is what we're seeing. This is where we think the biggest opportunity is. And this is where, our users are moving and we want to follow them. We want to empower them and amplify that. And they were like, okay, bet. Like they were like, we trust you. Like they were like, no one thinks about this more than you do. And I can't say that is the case for all founders trying to pivot, but for me, it worked out that way with my board. So I think, to answer your
part of it,
it was the person, team, investors. No, it was person, team, investors.
Awesome. But I think part of that might have been that you had open dialogue throughout. I mean, just based off of what I'm gathering from you, you seem to be great at closing feedback loops. And with doing that, I think you earn that trust, right, from your investor. And there actually was a recent study that was sent to me that said that the founders who have the most transparency with their customers, with their investors, with their employees, are that their rate of success is something like 50% higher than those who aren't good at having that transparency. So I think you bring up just a really important message for all founders in doing that. And as a quick plug, have you heard of Angel Span?
I haven't.
We actually have a partnership with them, but what they do is they actually provide a rubric and you pay on a monthly basis, but they have a rubric where they actually create investor relation documents for you. And you can also share those same things back with your team, right? Where they take all the data from your company and they present it in a way that has been proven to be very much appreciated by the investment community. So
I'll definitely take a look at that.
yeah, I was like, what an amazing thing, because it takes so much time, right, to prepare those things as a founder who's been on one
The
side.
one thing I do want to say, Allie, really quickly though, is that
Yeah.
I want to make sure, especially since we're like really talking to a female founder demographic here, two things around that kind of transparency. The struggle with transparency oftentimes is trust and not being sure with how that person or how the other party is going to respond, right? And
Yeah.
I think that it sometimes we see investors as like, oh my God, you're the Midas list number 4 or 5 or whatever the case is. But we have to keep in mind that they work for us. We don't
Mhm.
work for them. They're on our journey. We're not on their journey. They're here to empower us. We're not there to like suck up to them. And I think just
Yeah.
having that perspective as a female founder, like one of my investors, Steph Corey, who's the founder of Away, she told me, she was like, Isa, like, the way that you're pitching, you're making it seem like the investors, like, you need them, when the reality is that they need you a lot more than you need them, and you're going to make them a shit ton of money, and don't you forget that. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there
Love
as
that.
a reminder to female founders that we provide a lot of value to these people, and like they actually work for us.
Mhm. It's true, and they want their money to go as far as possible, and that is empowering the founder to do the best job that they can, but also helping to achieve the goals that the founder has set out for themselves. So that's a really good point, and I think it's something that women don't often remember. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to we're going to have to wrap up, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure to end with, I think that was actually a really great piece of advice, but if you have any other pieces of advice that you think are especially poignant for female founders as they go out to fundraise, as they think about pivoting, as they look to build these unicorn businesses, if you have any last piece of advice, and then also if you could share, I know you shared where to find Squad, but where to find you, because you're hysterical and informative and everything else. I'm a follower on Instagram, and I would be all over you on Twitter if I was on Twitter, but I'm embarrassingly not. I don't know if I should admit that, but if you could tell us where to find you and all of the social places that people might want to follow you.
So the three things that I leave these amazing badass female founders with are: one, don't be afraid to make very clear asks. So let's say, for instance, I'm talking to this guy, Travis, and I know Travis is super close to the managing partner at Bessemer at Sequoia. Hey, Travis, I want to know what's your take on how to best approach them. Are you comfortable making a strong intro? And I think that like we kind of sometimes dibble dabble across those conversations, but make those clear asks. The second thing I'll mention is the importance of storytelling. I find that like a lot of women, myself included, we're focused on the like, okay, these are the metrics, these are the things, but like, how are we changing the whole world? How is the world going to be so different in 10 to 20 years because of what we're building? And making sure we integrate that and incorporate that into what it is we're doing and how we're positioning ourselves. And the third thing I'll mention is make sure you have your rest and reset practices. Like I think that founder burnout is very real. It is very much amplified by the pressures and the intensity of fundraising. And so if like I went home last night and I took off my pants and sat on my sofa and stared out the window for like 20 minutes. I was like,
Feels so good, right?
I needed to just stare out the window
Zone out.
like, at nothing, and then I got back up and I was like, okay, I can work again. And so have those practices for you. I did a very lousy job of making sure I could reset the right way. And it took a toll on me personally, physically, mentally, emotionally. And, you got to be on your A game at all times. And as far as where to find me, I'm actually kind of taking a little bit of a break from the internet. But I am on Twitter. So I'm just Isa D. Watson, ISA. Or if you just type in Isa Watson, I should be the first one. Anytime they're like, here for your drink order, I'm like, Isa Watson, the one and only. Like, I think I should be the only one there. And then as far as squad, withyoursquad.com, get on the wait list. And we release people off the wait list every single week.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of your time and generosity and wisdom. And go keep kicking ass for all of us. You're doing great, and we need your product. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.